Hi, everyone. It is always good to be with you, and today is no different. Whether you're from the Story and Song community or the Be Well, Serve Well community, it's good to be together as we continue our series, Be Well Read. Today, I have a special edition for you. This edition falls under the category of It Bears Repeating. Some things do, and I believe books often do. One of the quotes that I shared last time we were together was this: if you would tell me the heart of a man, tell me not what he reads, tell me what he rereads. Many books lend themselves not only to be read, but also to being reread, even and perhaps especially the seemingly simplest of books, as we'll discover today. First, a word of introduction for anyone who may be tuning in for the first time. Welcome. I'm Deborah Garrard, founder of Be Well, Serve Well, a nonprofit wellness initiative serving those who serve. It's our mission to inform and inspire lives of health, joy, and generosity, with a special emphasis on serving those who serve in our communities. Some of our leaders, strong leaders create strong communities. These include our faith leaders, our educators, those raising children, and more. Each of us is here to serve, and we simply can't do that if we're not well. Be well, serve well. Now, if you've paid close attention to the logo, whether the logo for Be Well Read or for Be Well, Serve Well, you've noticed that little parenthetical E. You might have wondered what's with that. Well, in Hebrew, my name, Deborah, means worker bee. So there's a little trivia to get us started. You know, there's nothing trivial these days about our deep need for wellness and wholeness. The past year has found us scrambling like eggs, really kind of a hot mess. The pandemic has pushed us in every imaginable way. We found how ill prepared we were when it comes to staving off a physical threat to our bodies. We've grown anxious, fearful, and fearful of one another. Mask, no mask, social distancing. Is it safe to? You can fill in the blank. Fear has paralyzed us, and the messaging all around has fueled and fed our fear while completely neglecting the power of a not so trivial tool each of us uses every day for good, or too often it seems for ill. That not so trivial tool, food. Food. As unique and different as each of us is, sometimes I like to say deliciously different, there's something we all do 2, 3, maybe more times a day. We all eat. And in our eating, we either help or hinder our health. Now, I've listened to the experts since last March, guiding the steps we've all begun to take to thwart the threat of the coronavirus. I've listened and I've waited. And finally, this past Sunday, I heard a doctor encourage listeners to avoid foods that burden our systems and increase foods that fuel our systems and boost our immunity. Finally, long overdue. Now, these are the foods that we read about in Dr. Michael Greger's books, the books I shared in September, How Not to Die and How Not to Diet. They're the foods that we discussed in our exploration of radical remission and radical hope in October. The foods that Dr. Joel Fuhrman includes in the nutritarian eating lifestyle that we found in his book, Eat for Life. And they are the foods that we read about in Michael Pollan's New York Times bestseller, Food Rules, An Eater's Manual. It bears repeating. Pollan begins his powerful little guide with these words: eating in our time has gotten complicated, needlessly so, he writes. And so he offers us a series of policies designed to foster some simple everyday habits that will help you, his readers, and me moderate our eating and enjoy it more. Now, often we believe eating is either a feast or famine proposition. In turn, we can't imagine what Pollan suggests: moderating our eating and enjoying it more. But that is exactly the outcome that I've found in my own life and in the lives of others who begin to incorporate Pollan's tips. Food Rules is a book that I often recommend to clients as we begin our work together. Pollan is a New York Times bestselling author, not only of Food Rules, but also In Defense of Food and Omnivore's Dilemma, books that we'll probably explore in the future. He also has a new book out entitled How to Change Your Mind. It's not what you think. The author writes at the place where nature and culture intersect, on our plates, in our farms and gardens, and in our built environment, our society. Now, right from the start, you might be saying, food rules? No, thank you. That sounds a little restrictive, right? Well, no, not really. Not if you read it again. Remember, it bears repeating. Food rules. Rules as in holds power over our health in meaningful and measurable ways. In a country where 63% of deaths each year are from diet-related causes, it's pretty clear. Food rules. Life's definitely gotten complicated, and our food culture is no exception. Pollan is truly offering us an eater's manual, as the byline states, and he offers us answers to 3 simple questions. What should I eat? What kind of food should I eat? And how should I eat? When people come to me for guidance with their health, often, though not always related to their eating lifestyles, the question I most often ask is the same question that Michael Pollan begins the Eater's Manual by asking. What should I eat? This question and the popularity of food rules is a reflection of a culture with a pretty poor relationship with food and body. And while I help people navigate both the foods we eat and the life experiences that eat at us, both of them wreaking havoc on our health sometimes, I firmly believe food matters, and food matters are complicated. The food industry in the good old USA doesn't help much. It's distorted and hijacked food. No longer do we even know what real food is. And Pollan is right, we're constantly bombarded with edible food-like substances created in labs by scientists, sold simply for profit, not for the health of the consumer. Our children fall prey to the marketing messages too, and in turn, consumers like you and me are confused. What should I eat? If this is a question you ask often, and not just when you're staring at a menu at your favorite local hangout, reading this Eater's Manual is a great place to begin answering that question. As I share this book with you, it's my purpose to encourage you not only to be well read, but to be well and then to go out into a world that needs you and serve well. I'll share just enough, I hope, to whet your appetite to want to read the book for yourself, to have it in your own library. Food Rules cuts through the chatter with 7 simple words. Eat food, mostly plants, not too much. What should I eat? Eat food. What kind of food should I eat? Mostly plants. How should I eat? Not too much. That's the book in a proverbial nutshell, but there's more, of course. Recommending this book to clients, and now, again, to you, I encourage reading the introduction, slowly, carefully, and yes, rereading it more than once. It bears repeating. It's in the introduction that Pollan points out his book is less about theory and history and science than about our daily lives and practice. That's refreshing. And it's in the introduction that he points out, and rightly so, that nutritional science is a relatively new field of science. After all, medical students to this day are required to take less than 1 full course of nutrition in medical school. It's a fact that left one gastroenterologist telling his patient, a friend of mine, having just diagnosed her with microscopic colitis, not Crohn's or celiac or ulcerative or cellular colitis, microscopic colitis, what he described as the worst of the worst, a rare and incurable disease. He told her that if she didn't take the steroids that he was prescribing and take them for the rest of her life, she wasn't going to make it, literally. Instead, she healed fully and completely, in part through the healing power of targeted foods. He didn't know what he didn't know. It simply wasn't in his training, and therefore not in his wheelhouse, and not his fault. Pollan's book is far from anti-science, though. Please hear me. The author simplifies the science, and he looks back through history to recognize that the great bastions of nutritional wisdom were often our mothers and our grandmothers. And he includes their wisdom in this approachable little book. He actually dedicates it to his own mother. Now, my mother never talked about phytochemicals and antioxidants. Maybe yours did. My grandmother didn't either. As Pollan writes, human beings ate well and kept themselves healthy for millennia, long before nutritional science hopped on the scene. It's true. To quote, "It's entirely possible to eat healthily without knowing what an antioxidant is." Pollan sets out to help us do just that. Pollan actually highlights the points at where culture and custom confirm the science. His example, the traditional cultural custom of eating a tomato with olive oil. Now, speaking of antioxidants, one nutrient in a tomato is lycopene, which is an antioxidant, with health benefits from protection against the harmful rays of the sun, to improved heart health, to reduce risk of certain cancers. Lycopene in tomatoes is soluble in oil and therefore more easily absorbed by the body when we eat a tomato in olive oil. Now, after the brief rereadable introduction, Pollan offers 64 tips for eating. Some of the tips are one sentence, some are less than half a page, some less than 2 pages, and none more than that. I recommend keeping this book in your kitchen or close by, somewhere where you can read a tip a day for a couple of months, then circle back. As I said, it bears repeating. I'll share a few tips with you, and as I do, we quickly find our mothers and grandmothers, and in the case of tip number 2, our great-grandmothers. Listen up. Tip number 2, don't eat anything your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize as food. Good guidance. I'm certain there are plenty of things in our culture that would confound the most resilient of our great-grandmothers, but what Pollan describes as edible food-like substances created in labs by scientists just might top the list. Food-ish products like Go-Gurt, portable squeezable tubes of colored flavored gels that find their way into the hands of our little people, right along string cheese, not really cheese at all. When Pollan suggests what we should eat is real food, he wisely evokes the wisdom of great-grandmothers everywhere. Don't eat anything your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize as food. Eat food, real food. Tip number 6, avoid food products that contain more than 5 ingredients. That's easy. First, if a product contains ingredients and you didn't combine them in a bowl in your own kitchen, it's a processed, packaged product found in a bag, bottle, or box, to which I say, and Pollan agrees, buyer beware. Next, the more ingredients in these food-like substances created in labs by scientists, the more highly processed and the further away from real food we move. Pollan offers a great example, Haagen-Dazs ice cream, a line they had aptly called 5 because it only had 5 ingredients. 5, fine, it's still highly processed and far from real food. Tip number 7, avoid foods that contain ingredients a 3rd grader cannot pronounce. Same idea, different words. I appreciate that Pollan offers simple, basic guidance in bite-sized tips that are easily digested and remembered when we need them. Like this one, still under the heading of what should I eat? Eat food. Tip number 9, avoid foods with the wordoid light, L-I-T-E, or the terms low-fat or non-fat in their names. Now, you might be thinking, wait, I thought those were the healthy choices. Well, kind of like healthy choice frozen prepared foods, not so fast. I studied under T. Colin Campbell, Dr. T. Colin Campbell at Cornell University, who sat on many of the boards with the National Institutes of Health and the FDA, with other doctors recommending the inclusion of healthy fats in our eating lifestyles. The food industry would have none of it. After all, new labeling meant new products, meant new marketing, meant new money-making opportunities. But here's the thing, and I quote Pollan, "Since the low-fat campaign began in the 1970s, Americans actually have been eating more than 500 additional calories a day, most of them in the form of refined carbohydrates, like, you guessed it, sugar," end quote. You see, when one ingredient is removed, more of something else almost always replaces it in order to make that product palatable, or as the industry quotes, snackable, craveable. Those are industry terms, moneymakers indeed. Which begs a reference to tip number 19. If it came from a plant, eat it. If it was made in a plant, don't. I'm going to repeat that one. If it came from a plant, eat it. If it was made in a plant, don't. Honestly, the entirety of what I teach could almost be summed up in that sentence, which gets us to the second section of Pollan's Eater's Manual. And the second question, what kind of food should I eat? Mostly plants. Of course, Pollan has more than a handful of helpful tips to encourage our following this guidance, including tip number 22, where he advises especially eating leaves. Here his tip comes with this added encouragement and information. In countries where people eat a pound of fruits and vegetables every day, the rate of cancer is half what it is in the United States. We would do well to learn from others. Vegetarians are notably healthier than carnivores, and they live longer. It's a fact. Another bit of traditional wisdom with science to back it up is tip number 26, which I've begun to follow. Drink the spinach water. I eat a lot of spinach. I actually had spinach as part of my breakfast yesterday morning, and I drank the spinach water. Why waste the nutrients? Pollan notes the water in which vegetables are cooked is rich in vitamins and nutrients, minerals, and other healthful plant chemicals. Save it. Use it in soup or sauces, or drink it. Here's another fun tip. See if you can follow this. Eating what stands on one leg, mushrooms and plant foods, is better than eating what stands on two legs, fowl, which is better than eating what stands on four legs, cows, pigs, and other mammals. That's tip number 24. Tip number 35 definitely falls in the category of it bears repeating. Eat sweet foods as you find them in nature. I'm just going to read this one. It's that important. From Michael Pollan. In nature, sugars almost always come packaged with fiber, which slows their absorption and gives you a sense of fullness before you've ingested too many calories. That's why you're better off eating the fruit rather than drinking its juice. In general, calories taken in liquid form are more fattening because they don't make us feel full. Humans are one of the very few mammals that obtain calories from liquids after weaning. Think about that for a minute. So he goes on. So don't drink your sweets. And remember, there's no such thing as a healthy soda. What should I eat? Eat food. What kind of food should I eat? Mostly plants. Last question. How should I eat? Not too much. If you'd like a few tips on how to eat less, you'll enjoy this section of the book. How should I eat? Not too much. Tip number 47, eat when you're hungry, not when you're bored. Now, often if I'm working with someone who struggles with unwanted weight, binge eating, overeating, emotional eating, pretty common challenges, honestly, in our culture, I offer two questions. When you think you're hungry, ask yourself, am I hungry or am I bored? Now, I had an uncle who, if you ask him if he's hungry, will turn the question on you and ask, what time is it? As if the clock should determine whether he's hungry or not. Being bored shouldn't either. If that voice in your head or the voice in your child's head thinks it's time to eat, let's stop and ask, am I hungry or am I bored? If you're bored and you're not hungry, find something to do, something fun and fulfilling. Eat later, like maybe when you're hungry. Tip number 58, come to the table, or as Michael Pollan puts it, do all of your eating at a table. In the realm of how should I eat and Pollan's answer, not too much, this tip alone, I believe, would flip the table right over, and we would indeed eat less or not too much. And no, he writes, a desk is not a table. Mindless eating leads to more eating. I teach this principle, come to the table. I even have a workshop series by that title. There's evidence that meals around the table are fast becoming a thing of the past. Still, there's also evidence that meals around the table, especially family meals, make a significant difference in the lives of our growing children and grandchildren. According to the British Columbia Medical Association, children who eat at least one meal a day with their families in the home around the table develop more nutritious eating habits. They're more likely to have higher grades, better vocabulary, and improved communication skills. We adults might learn a thing or two also as we share with the younger generation around the table. Come to the table. I don't know who said it, but I believe it's true. Every moment, including this one, is an opportunity for ceremony and deeper connection. One more tip, perhaps my favorite, tip number 60, treat treats as treats. To me, this tip is the most memorable. It's obviously catchy, but it keeps everything in perspective. We all love treats. Still, when we have treats every day and feed our kids, and let's face it, ourselves, dessert for breakfast, pastries, donuts, sugary cereals, we've lost all perspective. Here's another case in point where outsourcing our food has gotten us into trouble. If we had to make all those sweets and snacks that we ate, we would eat a whole lot less. And along the way, we've lost sight of the occasion. I'm reminded of my own family, and we're right back to learning from our grandmothers. We might go to my grandmother's for Sunday lunch, every couple of months. And when we did, she loaded up the bowls, creamed corn, fried chicken, biscuits. It was a rare and treasured treat. It took time. It cost her dearly, I'm sure. It was an occasion, usually a Sunday, and we loved it and her a lot. Treat treats as treats. Now I invite you to the treat of reading this simple eater's manual, Food Rules by Michael Pollan. It's a book to read and reread. I hope I've whet your appetite to check with our friends at Story and Song or check their online bookshop. Get your own copy. It bears repeating. Food indeed rules over our health in ways we might not have considered before. Now, before signing off, I have a special invitation for you. Be Well, Serve Well is hosting a spring event, a virtual walkathon for the love of teachers. As a walker, you'll be able to walk, to honor a teacher who's impacted your life or the life of your child or grandchild. And that teacher will automatically be entered in a drawing for a complimentary seat at our upcoming program designed specifically for educators, Hall Pass to Health. It's a program including workshops and one-on-one consultations and more. All proceeds from the walk will benefit this program for educators. We're going to put a link with more information and the registration link in the comments section. I hope you'll walk with us for the love of teachers. I also hope you'll reach out to Story and Song for all your reading needs. And I hope you'll reach out to me and Be Well, Serve Well if you have some health concerns that you're experiencing. It'll be a privilege to help you heal. Today, thanks to Connor, Mark, and Donna for always making this possible and partnering with me to share books with you, books to help you be well read. I'll be back in mid-March, March 11th, I think it is, with another episode of Be Well Read. Thank you for tuning in. And until the next time, be well, serve well, and you know I'll do the same thing.